Sometimes I sit in my room after a long day of work and ask myself, why can't everyone be just as good of a driver as me? I'm fast, I'm slick, I'm cool, I'm one with the wind, and any police officer who has a problem with that, I'm gonna stop actually. Point being, driving in real life is so unfulfilling. That's why I'm eternally grateful for the concept of racing games, which are great ways of pulling your mind out of reality and truly living my lifelong dream of speeding through the world like a maniac. While you could pick one of the many driving simulators available, there's also more cartoony options, which are what I primarily grew up with. Mario Kart, Crash Team Racing, and the numerous licensed ripoffs had a huge presence in my childhood. But perhaps the biggest one for me is by far Sonic the Hedgehog himself. A Sonic racing game isn't a revolutionary idea. In fact, if you think about it, it's kinda in the DNA of him. It was bound to happen eventually given the fact that his entire origin is based upon the concept of speed. But what's really interesting is the many ways Sonic has tackled the genre. Sega's never been able to solidify the perfect racing game for him, and have thus thrown many ideas at the wall, much like the actual franchise. So in this video, we're going to go through every single racing experience Sonic has ever undergone, and try to decide for ourselves what worked for him, and what absolutely did not. I mean, how many can there be? We begin a long, arduous journey with Sonic Drift. Sonic Drift is a kart racing game that came out for the Sega Game Gear. And I know what you're thinking. Ugh, why is Sonic in a car? It was released on March 8, 1994. The game was actually an exclusive title to Japan until it was included on compilation releases years later like Sonic Adventure DX and Sonic Mega Collection Plus. And upon playing it, I can see why. The game features Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Dr. Eggman racing in vehicles that suit their personalities. There are 6 environments to choose from in this game, each one with 3 variants in its racetrack to give us a total of 21 selectable tracks. None of the tracks in terms of design have a real distinct style due to the nature of all of them just providing backdrops to a generic track layout. I'm pretty indifferent towards this game. I mean, when I played it, it was alright, and it obviously was all they could have done given the limitations of the Game Gear. Like, what else could you really expect? Although I can't lie, it was frustrating playing the game at times because due to the nature of the game, it's hard to react to turns and obstacles in a timely manner since they just pop up at you randomly throughout the track unless you're keeping an eye on both your car and the map above it at the same time, which is a little bit difficult. You basically have to memorize the track somewhat to stand a chance in winning, which isn't all that different from modern kart racing games, but unlike modern kart racing games, you can't even see what's ahead of you, and so you basically just have to react in an instant, which is not really ideal. At least in modern kart racing games, you can see what's ahead of you, so you can thus react and plan accordingly. As a result, I just didn't have a fun time playing through this game, as I would slow down often, and half the time I'd have no idea what I actually hit or if someone hit me. The game is just bogged down by its natural technical limitations, and as a result, it's just not a very memorable title. The game itself didn't have the best reception either. According to Sonic News Network, most game publications did not have the greatest things to say about Drift when it first came out. On its release, Famicom Tushin scored the game a 19 out of 40. When the game was included in Mega Collection Plus, GameSpy stated that it was almost unplayable, while Eurogamer called it terrible racing game whose flickering madness actually made me physically sick. Talk about painful. Sonic Drift was never going to win me over is because I grew up in a time where the console it was developed for was just too inferior to what I was seeing at that point. Just looking at the game made me skeptical and bored, and this is honestly the first time I've actually genuinely tried to play through it, and I couldn't stomach it for more than 10 minutes. But given what you could do on the Game Gear, I'm not surprised that this is what came out, and I'm just not a good judgment in terms of whether or not this was considered a good game for the Game Gear. And so if anyone has any insight on that, then definitely let me know in the comment section below. But overall, Sonic Drift was just not the most enjoyable game to me, and so that's why I was really excited to see that it had a sequel. Hooray! Sonic Drift 2 was released in Japan and Europe in March 1995 and in North America in November of 1995. This sequel is pretty much superior in every way compared to the original. You're immediately met with more characters and tracks to choose from. That's a great start. Got Knuckles, Fang the Sniper, and Metal Sonic. I just find it so cool to have all the oddball choices they could have gone with. It was Fang the Sniper. I don't know why, but Fang just has such a special and significant place in my heart. One day, you'll return, my mischievous friend. Tracks are a little bit more diverse in design as well. They each have a more unique look to them compared to the simple backdrops of the original, and some of them have you do the typical 3 laps, while others have a lengthier course you just go through once. Some of them have pitch you can fall in, others just terrain that slows you down. And I guess this was my answer as to whether or not Sonic Drift was maximizing the capabilities of the Game Gear, because clearly it was not, because Sonic Drift 2 is just an improvement in every single way that I could imagine. I genuinely had a decent time with this one. It isn't anything amazing, don't get me wrong, but it was more than I had expected. Despite this though, Sonic Drift 2 received mixed to negative reviews from critics much like the original one. On its release, Famicom Tushin gave the game a 19 out of 40 yet again. For its inclusion in Sonic Gems collection, Tom Bramwell of GameSpot criticized the game for looking awful due to the resolution of Game Gear emulation. Ryan Davis of GameSpot also called the game unplayable because of poor handling and a really short horizon. I know this sounds very harsh, and Sonic Drift 2 does not really look that appealing from what you can see right here, but upon playing it, I honestly am just impressed as to how much they were able to improve it beyond Sonic Drift. I mean, sure, it's still nothing special, and it certainly is not a kart racing game that I'll be going back to in the future, but for the Game Gear and for being released immediately after the first one, there was a lot of things that they did right here, and it felt more fun, and it felt more diverse and more interesting, and I just imagined that like if they actually took the Sonic Drift idea and brought it to the Genesis or to the Sega Saturn as to what they could have come up with. But they didn't bring this to the Sega Saturn. No, they brought something else to the Sega Saturn, and it was interesting to say the least. Sonic R is one of the most infamous Sonic games in the franchise. I mean, for some reason, this game is just constantly being talked about, and I think the big reason for it is just because of how much of an odd Sonic game it is. Upon opening it up, you can immediately tell that there's just something off about this game in terms of Sonic aesthetic. Sonic to me has a very specific identity, at least when it came to these games back during the Genesis days. You know, he was very cool, he was very techno-ish, and he had this very like Japanese feel to him that every single Sonic game had, but Sonic R felt very different. It felt American. It felt almost like something of a bootleg Sonic game actually, which is kind of funny because, you know, it's an official Sonic game and it was officially licensed by Sega and everything, but everything about Sonic R just feels so off from everything that Sonic has come to be at this point. Development of Sonic R began after the completion of Sonic 3D Blast in 1996 and took 9 months. It was the second collaboration between Traveler's Tales and Sonic Team, and it was designed to take advantage of the Saturn hardware. Sonic Team designed the racetracks, while Traveler's Tales handled implementation and programming using a custom game engine. This is actually a pretty significant game if you think about it within the Sonic franchise, because not only was it Sonic's first fully 3D game, but it also gave a taste of what a fully 3D Sonic game could be like, albeit very limited taste. It was also basically the main selling point for Sonic on the Sega Saturn, that poor thing. I'll be honest, I didn't even like Sonic R as a kid. As soon as I popped it in Gems Collection to try it out, I was immediately turned off by it. I guess one reason could have been the graphics, which to be fair was probably really impressive around the time it came out, but playing the game now, yeah, I don't think I missed much. But this also kind of harkens back to how I feel like Sonic R just doesn't match the Sonic's theme or aesthetic that I've come to know Sonic for at this point. Like, it just felt very Americanized compared to everything else Sonic was releasing during that time, and I guess it just wasn't that appealing to me. Not saying that Americanized Sonic can't work, I mean it certainly has worked in the past, but Sonic R to me is definitely not one of those examples. It's funny though, because this is actually how I envisioned a Sonic racing game would be as a child. Sonic and friends racing on foot through classic levels. In fact, Adventure 2 and Heroes have multiplayer modes that only further cemented this view for me. So Sonic R actually felt a lot more natural to me as an idea for a racing game compared to any other racing game that was out there in the time for Sonic. But what really throws off Sonic R for me is just how it feels to control. Characters feel more like blocks with wheels on them rather than actual Sonic characters from the mainline games. This could have been a great opportunity to translate what made the 2D games so fun into a racing environment, but I think the fact that Traveler's Tales had nothing to go off of in terms of 3D in Sonic put them at a huge disadvantage. They just didn't know what Sonic was supposed to do in a 3D 2D plane. I mean, Sonic had been almost exclusively been a 2D franchise up to this point. There was just no map or guidelines as to what Sonic should feel like or play like in a 3D environment, and so as a result, Traveler's Tales just kind of made this really awkward feeling game that's just infamous within the community. The control of the game just left very little for me to desire as I went through its 5 levels, which is also a really short amount of levels for a racer, even back then. I guess I can appreciate Sonic R for laying down the groundwork for future racers, but it just wasn't a great title to me, and I don't understand the fascination with it. I mean, I guess the music is kind of one reason. I really like the music in this game. I didn't know Madonna made music for the Sonic franchise too. The music of Sonic R just further cements it as to why it's such a weird game within the Sonic lineup. There is basically no Sonic game that had music like this. I mean, Sonic CD did have that Sonic Boom song in the beginning, but even that one had rock tendencies to it. The music of this game is just pure Europop, and it's just such a weird soundtrack for a Sonic game. It almost feels like something that should be part of Knights actually compared to Sonic, but I suppose it gives Sonic R that charm of it being like a bootleg title of the Sonic franchise. And I don't know, I may not want to see Sonic R come back anytime soon in terms of its mechanics, but I certainly am okay with its music making appearances in Sonic games. It would be almost a full decade before we would see a brand new racing game on the console from Sonic, but in the meantime, we actually got 3 more racing titles. But don't get your hopes up. Does the name Sonic Cafe mean anything to you? Sonic Cafe was Sega's mobile phone game service in Japan. For a fee of 315 yen a month after tax, the user got access to an entire library of currently available games to download as many times as they want. There were actually tons of games here, and I'm low-key impressed. This means the Japanese were very lucky people, right? 3 of these were racing games. Sonic Racing Shift Up was the first one released in 2002. In this game, the player has to shift gears in the kart as quickly as possible, but get the timing right at the same time. The player can also use the rings that you earn to tune up your karts and make them faster. Yeah, this sounds like the most boring take for a Sonic game I think I've ever heard. Like, who wants to play a racing game where you're just shifting gears? I don't know, it's just such a weird idea, and I kind of wish there was footage of this game online just so I can see what it was actually like, but yeah, that's a really weird and dumb idea for a game, not gonna lie. The next kart racing game came out in 2003 and it was called Sonic Racing Kart. In this one, the player controls Sonic and you race around kart courses as fast as possible. It's possible to even go online and download time attacks of others to race against and then upload your own. The controls work extremely simple. The kart automatically accelerates, so all the player has to do is turn left and right. It sounds simple enough and about what I expect from a mobile game during this era, and looking at the screenshots, it basically is as simplistic as it looks and sounds, and so it definitely feels more like what I would expect from a mobile Sonic racing game from this time. The next game that came out though was called Sonic Kart 3DX and it was released in 2005. This game is a sequel to Sonic Racing Kart. From the screenshots, this actually looks interesting and I wish I could try it out or watch some videos of the game. But alas, I couldn't find any footage while making this video, but it's a 3D kart racing game and it actually looks like the closest that we were going to get to a 3D Sonic kart racing game until the Sega All-Stars games came out. And so, I don't know, it looks very interesting. I would have liked to try it out. There's really not that much to say about these games other than the fact that they're a nice relic of the time. I wish I was able to play these and talk a little bit more about them, but mobile gaming has become so much more than I could have ever imagined. I mean, some of the games I'm going to be talking about later in this video do have mobile versions to them, and they are much more than these games ever could have been. I mean, the fact that Rehydrated is on mobile now is just a crazy thing. So, mobile gaming has definitely come a long way, and who knows, we might be seeing some really awesome kart racing games coming out on the mobile platform in the future. I mean, the technology certainly is there. Sonic Riders, like where do I even begin? For those of you who have never figured it out, I actually named myself after this game, and so it's definitely something that's got a very big piece in my heart in terms of games I grew up on. Sonic Riders was developed by Sonic Team and now production for the GameCube, PS2, Windows, and Xbox to kickstart the Sonic series' 15th anniversary. You know, that anniversary that beautifully destroyed the entire franchise. The game was directed by Kenjiro Morimoto and produced by Takashi Yuda. I really hope I didn't butcher that. Series co-creator Yuji Naka served as executive producer. This was actually the last Sonic game that he was credited on before forming his own company, which was Probe, and also the beginning of a lot of firsts and lasts for the franchise, but that's for another day. Sonic Riders was actually announced in the September 2005 issue of Famitsu before being showcased at the Tokyo Game Show later that month. The console's versions were then eventually released in North America on February 21st, 2006. In their eyes, the intention behind Riders was to make a completely new experience unlike any other Sonic game before. So instead of the kart racer or on-foot racers of the past, Sonic Team opted for a game taking heavy inspiration from F-Zero while still creating something completely new through what they call airboarding. Everything about Riders when I first grabbed my hands on it just seemed completely distinct from other Sonic games such as gameplay, graphics, music, and storyline. It truly felt like we had crossed into an altered dimension with the same characters. In my opinion, Sonic Riders is an extremely underrated title. The game may have a very large learning curve, but once you've mastered the mechanics, it's something that's just so much fun to play through over and over again. Even going back to it now all these years later and replaying through it, I have so many fond memories of playing this game as a kid every single day. You see, I was basically trapped in an apartment with my cousins for 3 months because my grandfather was passing away in another state. So during those days, we literally played Riders 24/7, making my mom quite irritated in the process, and not because she wanted to watch TV. But I just couldn't help it. There was this magnetic energy about Riders that I still feel now. I mean, I named myself after the game for a reason. So it was quite surprising to me when I got into the internet a little bit more afterwards and saw that Riders actually had a very polarizing reception, and you need to look no further than its racing mechanics as the main culprit. When you first play Sonic Riders, it is a hell of a storm you're trying to brave. It takes a little time to get used to just simply moving automatically, not to mention performing tricks, using special abilities, drifting, boosting, maintaining air. It is a lot to take in at first, and there's just no easy way to just jump into it. Not like games like Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing, where the controls feel intuitive yet simple yet complex at the same time. Sonic Riders was just complex from the get-go, and the game really makes no attempt to ease you into the experience beyond a mediocre tutorial video that half of the players probably didn't even know existed. I'm serious, it's just hidden away in this extras menu at the very back, and I'm just like, I didn't even know this was there as a kid. How could you expect any random person, especially a non-Sonic fan, to come around and see that this is here? But really, I do promise you this, if you can get past the almost alien-like controls, you'll find a racing game that has an incredible amount of depth and adrenaline that you'll never get tired of. I love the racetracks, the music, and the goofy as hell story that I've honestly grown to love as I've gotten older. Riders is just such an important game in my life as a video gamer, and I do plan to make a more in-depth video about the whole franchise when the time comes. But to basically sum it up, Sonic Riders, while it does take a long time to get into, once you get into it, it's just something that you can never let go of. I love how the game challenges me. I love how rewarding it feels to finally master its mechanics and get through the levels with ease. I love the themes and aesthetics of all the tracks. I love the techno-inspired music of the soundtrack. I love all the Sega cameos that you can see once you get further through the game. And I especially love how cringy and funny at the same time the storyline is. You know, it just feels like a very 2000s game, and it's definitely something that I feel very nostalgic for, and it's just something that I'll probably never let go of, and I'll probably never stop enjoying. I would love to see Sonic Riders come back in this form and even have like online multiplayer or something, you know, just something to expand the community and just make Riders much more of a staple in terms of the racing genre. To see that the game is still being kept alive through online communities and mods is just something that's truly awesome to me and just makes me so warm inside. Sonic Riders may be gone for the time being, but for now, I'll leave you with a bunch of clips of Jet's voice crack.
Yeah, that's when I took over things for my father. I think it's time for a little fun. Stop it! Oh well. I lost, so don't play games with me.
Sonic Rivals was released in late 2006. It is the first Sonic game developed by Backbone Entertainment for the PlayStation Portable. The game's concept originated from a traditional platform game Backbone designed. Takashi Iizuka became involved in the game and he changed its direction to a racing game. Majority of development was handled by Backbone with assistance from Sega Studio USA, although some aspects such as the story were done by Sega. Why am I not surprised? They wanted this game to mimic the style of the Genesis titles, but putting their own spin on it at the same time with racing mechanics. Even though it is a 2D side-scroller, the game has a very different feel from any 2D Sonic game that came before it. One of the most obvious examples of this to me is that when you're rolling in a ball, in most Sonic games this would build up speed, but it actually slows you down here, even when going downhill. So it's actually faster to just jump dash out of it and keep moving on foot. Whether you like these small yet significant changes is up to your taste really. I personally actually had a lot of fun with this game when I was a kid, and returning to it now after so long, I still had a pretty fun time. The game is simple and it's basically just a Sonic platformer with racing mechanics thrown into it, but you know what? It kind of reminds me a lot of the multiplayer modes of Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes with items added into it, and it's just like something that I feel like Sonic should have done a long time ago. And even though Sonic R was kind of like that game, Sonic Rivals actually feels a lot more like a Sonic game compared to Sonic R, even though it still feels pretty different. So it's very interesting to me that whenever we have these like Sonic on foot racing games, they always find some way to make it seem extremely different from typical Sonic games, despite, you know, it being Sonic on foot just with racing mechanics, and so it really shouldn't feel that different. I will say that the game's biggest downfall is its level design, as there are just way too many long stretches of time where you're just holding right through straightforward paths. It's fine every once in a while, and it certainly isn't the first Sonic game to do that. Scripted segments are pretty much a mainstay of Sonic games nowadays, but it's so much more prevalent here and it's thus extremely noticeable. The bosses aren't much better, as it basically results in the same pattern of waiting for the doctor to slam his head down and give you an opening to attack. Having a rival try to impede your progress is really just a minor annoyance. Doesn't make the fight any more fun, but they only detract a little when they score a hit that very well should have been yours. The game isn't groundbreaking. I'll certainly take the more thrilling and natural feel of the Rush games over this, but despite all its flaws, Rivals holds its own while making fan favorites like Knuckles, Shadow, and Silver playable with their own stories. Speaking of the storyline, it's pretty ridiculous. It literally consists of starting fights over who gets to talk to Eggman first. I've never taken a storyline for racing games that seriously, so at least it doesn't try to be more than what it is, but I gotta admit, reading and listening to the dialogue in this game is pretty interesting. However, this game sadly suffers from what I like to call the Sonic Hero syndrome. There are 4 different story campaigns, but you guessed it, they are all exactly the same. Same levels, same order, there aren't even any differences between the level layouts. At least Heroes try to somewhat mix it up. If you're truly curious, I'd recommend just playing through one campaign and then watching cutscenes for all the others. There really is no reason to go through the same campaign 4 times with a different skin. I will say though, I like the game's system of awarding you collectible cards. It feels very satisfying collecting a few with each race and also getting excited about the various games that these cards reference. It's a really cool way to just kind of reward people for just being a fan of Sonic and recognizing all the references the game tries to pack into itself. Overall, Sonic Rivals is not a great 2D game, but it's fun enough for one playthrough. Sonic Rivals came out during an era where practically every spin-off was getting a sequel, and Rivals sure wasn't going to miss out on that. The cover art automatically shows some promise though, as we see so many more faces that weren't there in the first game showing up, like Tails, Rouge, and Espio. Rivals 2 maintains the overall same gameplay from the first one, but it has a very different feel nonetheless that actually makes it better in every shape or form compared to Rivals. Immediately the level design just feels much more exciting and varied. There's less stretches of road and more interesting platforming designs thrown in. It definitely demanded the player be more conscious while playing it, which is an important factor for any racer. If you're just holding right and just going through the motions, you're going to get to the less beneficial paths that make you take longer to get to the end and possibly lose the race. On top of that, the game also feels tougher than the first one. If you have just one somewhat major screw up, it'll basically cost you the whole race. I definitely appreciate the increased challenge of Rivals 2, as it just demanded much more from me, and I appreciate that. Rivals overall was a little bit more of a passive game for me, so I definitely like that Rivals 2 demanded more. The bosses feel more varied as well. You're not just waiting for the boss to show a weak point. In many bosses, there's a certain action you need to perform to land a hit on the boss, or some platforming to get to the boss. There's even one boss in particular where you're moving forward the entire time, and so there's definitely some more variety in these bosses. Honestly, everything about Rivals 2 level design is just leaps ahead of the first game, and I'm so glad that Backbone took notes from the first game and improved the game appropriately. It's just a great example of a company actually learning from their mistakes and making better games because of it. I really do wish all sequels were like this. There's also a brand new aspect to Rivals 2 that was not present in the original game, and that is the battle system. You remember those character battles from the Avenger games and Heroes? Yeah, it's basically that same concept, but a little bit more formalized. These are a mixed bag. A lot of the enjoyment for me personally depends on the stage layout. If the stage is a bit difficult to maneuver, these can be very tough to get through, especially if the AI is a little bit too jumpy. But even then, these battles have a lot of the same issues found in similar types of battles from previous games. There's not a lot of strategy that can be done upon figuring out how to be in the right place at the right time to land your attacks. There are different rules that you can play under, like Knockout and Ring Collector, so it does add some more variety to the game. Overall, it's definitely not the main selling point of Rivals 2 by a long shot, but it served as an interesting change of pace during the story campaigns. And speaking of the stories, we now have 8 playable characters this go around, with Tails, Rouge, and Espio being the new additions. I'm very happy to expand the roster, as that's always something that's really good to have a racing game. More choices the better, despite this one being sort of a platformer as well. But of course, with 8 characters, we've also got 8 stories. And you guessed it, they carried over the same problem from the first game. This is the worst case of Sonic Heroes syndrome I've ever seen, especially when the stories between pairs are nearly identical in every way. Each character is basically paired with a partner that they go through the whole adventure with: Sonic and Tails, Knuckles and Rouge, Shadow and Metal Sonic, and Silver and Espio. So padding was just such a common thing for Sonic games during this era, no matter what developer. Obviously, I could only stomach to go through the campaign once. I will give the actual campaign credit though, because not all the stages in the stories are races like the first game. Some of them are time attacks, others are ring collecting missions, and so many other things, and just add some more variety. The more varied objectives aid in creating a story that isn't extremely forced like the first Rivals, where you're basically against everyone. You know, you're not always racing Knuckles, for instance. You're not always in a fight with him. You're not always fighting Shadow. Sometimes you're having a conversation with him because you're not supposed to be enemies, you're just rivals. That's all. And so the story makes a little bit more sense. The story itself is very typical for Sonic though during this time, where Eggman is trying to release this big and bad monster, this case named Ifrit, upon the road across dimension and space, and yada yada yada. Basically, big bad monster, everyone has to come together to stop it. Each pair of characters adds a unique perspective, so I would at least watch the cutscenes on YouTube if you're curious, but I definitely would not go through the campaign more than once. Overall, Sonic Rivals 2 is better than the first game in every way, and is truly a shining example of how to do a sequel right, despite the flaws that it did still carry over. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity on the other hand though, heartbreak is a tough thing to go through. Sonic Riders is one of the most special games in the world, as I stated before, so I of course was ecstatic to see that a sequel was coming. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity was first announced by Sega at Games Conference 2007 for a Q1 2008 release. Scott Steinberg, Vice President of Marketing at Sega of America, he commented on the game's announcement, saying that the game would offer longtime Sonic fans and newcomers alike the adrenaline-pumping gameplay and moves that made the Blue Hedgehog famous, while adding a plethora of completely new elements to the Sonic world. While the first Riders had gameplay I absolutely adored, I recognized that the learning curve was too steep and is a tough title for just about anyone to get into. Zero Gravity tries to correct this by simplifying the gameplay, but I feel they may have gone a little bit overboard. The air system is completely replaced by a gravity mechanic that seems really cool on paper. It comes with a couple new abilities, one being sort of like a Superstars power-up from All Stars Racing, where you just burst ahead at high speeds. You also have the ability to discover different pathways through gravity, riding on walls, which can lead into time-saving shortcuts. These are pretty cool to pull off, but I don't think it added as much strategy to the game as they hoped it would. It basically boils down to performing the correct move at the right time and nothing more. Beyond that, many mechanics from the original Riders were significantly nerfed. The trick system has been reduced to the simple press of a button, which I found to be extremely lame. Drifting is also a shell of its former self, as you now use the gravity mechanic to make sharp turns. It's much easier here because it almost stops time and allows you to freely select the direction you want to speed into. It's no longer vital to come at corners from the right corner and initiating the turn at the right time. Well, not as vital anyway. These changes for me took a lot of the fun out of the gameplay. It's just not nearly as much input you need to put into this game anymore. I feel like all Riders really needed was just a robust tutorial system to ease people into the game. Zero Gravity does provide this as well, but the changes it made to the gameplay took a lot of the fun out of the style of Riders. Although you can't run out of air and be put on foot at least, so that's good. It's still a fun game to me, don't get me wrong, but it just feels severely less inspired, and that's an overall thing theme I found in this game. I'm not sure if it's just my nostalgia for the first game, but the level themes for Zero Gravity feel so much more bland in comparison. They took a lot of the same ideas from the original and just made more of them, really. I do like how Gigan Rocks looked. It felt like something straight out of Sonic Adventure 2. And of course, the Sega infused tracks are just a treat to play through. This uninspired theme or feeling that I got from this game, it seeps into the story as well, which is completely void of the goofiness of the first one. I know the humor of the first Riders is polarizing, but Zero Gravity's story is completely forgettable in comparison. It's a story that focused so much more on building the lore of the world rather than on the characters themselves, which just feel like pawns in that world building. It's not nearly as entertaining watching these characters interact. They're just going through the motions of the plot. I won't keep speaking about it because the plot is really such a minor factor of this game, but man, it just contributes to the overall downgrade that this game has compared to the original. I feel like Sonic Team took all the criticism for the first game and just approached it all the wrong way, overcorrecting everything rather than improving upon what they had. But hey, at least we got that.
Huh?
Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing!
Though Sonic may be the first thing you read, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing is a true crossover kart racing game, with characters from numerous franchises showing their faces such as Ai, Ulala, Samba de Amigo, and even Alex Kidd. It really is quite the Sega party, and it looks really enticing from the outside. The game was developed by Sumo Digital, who had previously created Sega Superstars Tennis and the Outrun games, so they weren't totally new to the racing genre or the idea of bringing Sega icons together. With Mario Kart having dominated the kart racing landscape though, to say that Sumo Digital had their work cut out for them would be underselling it. There's no way for Sumo Digital to basically overcome the legacy that Mario Kart had created. So how do you create a space for yourself in a genre where that space really isn't there? Well, my friends, Sumo had an answer. A chaotic, adrenaline-inducing, heart-stomping response to the impossible. To say that All-Stars Racing is a solid kart racer would be an injustice. Playing through this game, I immediately fell in love with how the karts felt in my hands. With Mario Kart, its simplicity and tight controls make it an accessible title for even the most anti-video gaming subjects out there. I'm serious, like I have this friend from college who swears that she would never ever become a video game fan just because it doesn't interest her. But I played Mario Kart with her one night and she beat me in every race, so yeah, it's a really accessible kart racing game. All-Stars Racing is, while accessible, it has a much more entropic energy to it. You feel like you're going 10 times the speed you could ever reach in Mario Kart first of all, yet you're able to have the most solid control over where you go as well. It feels as slick as oil transitioning into a drift to constantly boost your speeds in this game across tracks that can be tricky to navigate. Combine that with voice clips and characters and you got yourself a kart racer with tremendous amounts of spunk and attitude infused into its veins. The character selection definitely shows that this is a party. It's a solid variety of Sega's biggest names with approximately 20 or more characters to choose from, depending on which version you pick up. I'm still not over Knights being a simple flagman here though, truly a very undeserving position for Knights. But other than that, it's a very solid selection and I love seeing all the racers racing on all the tracks in this game. I also just want to quickly mention that the character victory animations are truly a sight to behold. They're very janky and very 2000s like, and I just love them. If there is a weak point to this game though, it's that the track selection may leave a little bit to be desired as you have some level themes that just get repeated across some tracks, such as the 3 Seaside Hill ones. But there's nonetheless still a good amount of variety and representation here, although it could be improved. And most of the tracks are designed quite fairly as well, with the exception of Monkey Ball ones. I'm pretty sure they infused the Monkey Ball tracks with the most twists and turns on purpose. It's extremely fitting, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, whenever I'm able to have a group of friends over to play this game, this definitely won't be the first track I pick. Now, I'm a big Sonic fan, but I can't say that I'm into many Sega franchises. But for some reason, there's just something really ethereal about seeing so much of Sega's history in one place. It makes me want to check out other titles that Sega's put out over the years and truly appreciate them as a publisher. I tried out Knights once and I fell in love with it, and I definitely want to play even more Knights in the future, and so I definitely can see that happening to me with more Sega franchises once I make the time. I actually have a lot of memories of playing this on my phone in particular, believe it or not. I totally forgot that there was a mobile port version of this game, and it's basically the same exact game as the console ones, just downgraded of course. Apparently the DS version is the same exact thing, and so this truly is a kart racing game that can be played on basically any device at that point. I think it was really cool that Sega did their best to make this game available on every single platform possible. possible. Everything was in line to make this game a classic and something really memorable in the Sega catalog, and I truly had a blast running through it. So how in the world was Sumo Digital going to follow this up? I don't know if I want to do that, you folks. So, got everything all set up, and I don't know what it's asking me to do right now, but we are going to be doing this, playing Sonic Free Riders, and yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's not like this game has been universally panned by everyone that's ever touched it. No, I think we're in for a good treat. Sonic Free Riders is a motion-controlled racing video game developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega exclusively for the Xbox 360. The game requires the use of Microsoft's Kinect, releasing it as a Kinect launch title in November of 2010. The game is controlled using your body to navigate your chosen character throughout the course. Actions that you can perform include bending your body to steer, kicking to increase speed, and jumping to perform tricks which earn more boost. And in my case, jumping and falling. The game carries many ideas from the previous two games, such as weapons, leveling up, and formation-specific abilities. Needless to say, a Riders game on the Kinect is a messy enough idea on its own, but judging from all the reviews, it's even messier than I could have possibly ever imagined. The game received a Metacritic score of 47 out of 100. Many reviewers panned its motion controls, which they believe ruined the game and made it a bad launch for the Kinect. Game Trailers gave the game a score of 4.5, panning cumbersome controls that tax the body. Joystick gave the game 1 out of 5 stars, calling it the equivalent of patting your head while rubbing your stomach while riding a unicycle. And IGN gave it a 7.5 out of 10.
There are even modes that require you to physically touch the person next to you, which is awesome if you actually want to touch them.
Riders is a complex enough game as it is tied to a controller. Both Riders and Zero Gravity require time to get into its mechanics and truly feel comfortable with them. The Kinect is just a whole beast of its own, and it just didn't seem to be the right place for a Riders game to put its stamp on. And upon playing it, yeah, I completely stand by that statement. Sonic Free Riders is fun when it works. When it works is actually a really interesting way to tackle a Riders game, not to mention a decent workout. But when it doesn't work, which is like 80% of the time, it's an unresponsive mess that frustrates me to death and beyond. Like, y'all don't understand, I actually really badly wanted to at least like this game. I wanted to be an apologist. I want to be the one that would defend this game to everyone. I love the Riders series, but I've been putting off trying Free Riders for the longest time because I did not want this game with the franchise to taint my view of it. Like, I knew that there was some risk in playing this game. I knew that there was a risk I was gonna hate it, and I did not want that. You know, I could tolerate Zero Gravity being okay, but I can't tolerate a terrible Riders game. But playing it, I just can't help it. The game just doesn't work and results in a lot of terrible, frustrating moments in just fighting the game to have the character do what it is you want them to do. What I find weird about my experiences personally is that I often would start off the level somewhat fine actually, but then it just progressively gets tougher to maintain control of the character. So I wonder if slight changes in my position just progressively led to my downfall, but like, I can't help that. Like, you're asking me to steer left and right and jump up and down. How can I stay in the same spot while doing that? Like, I'm just not smart enough to do that. But all that aside, it's just not fun, and I really don't want to revisit this game again, no matter how much I love basically everything else about it, because everything else about this game is pretty awesome. The colors and the music just harkens back to what made the first Riders such a blast to play through for me as a kid. I felt like Zero Gravity really just dampened the whole Riders experience. Everything about it just seems so like goth, I guess. Like, I don't know, it just seems much darker and just less exciting. But Free Riders goes back to the original game's aesthetics and makes it look even more exciting in comparison, which just makes the actual game that much more disappointing. One interesting thing about this game that I'll talk about before I finish it off is that it marks the first appearances of Sonic's current voice cast, with a storyline that's essentially a watered down version of the first game. While there's nothing too special here in terms of story, it's cool listening to all these characters converse when we would otherwise never see them in the same room. The game really did look like it could be fun on the outside. Like, it really did. I was kinda hopeful that the game could be fun, and I was having a little fun at first, but that was only because it was really easy, and then they just started pumping up the difficulty just a little bit, and then I realized the game just doesn't work. It ultimately shattered my hopes and dreams, and that's just the way love goes sometimes.
Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform.
Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform came out 2 years after the original and had every intention of being bigger and better in every single way. The elephant in the room we'll immediately address is the transform mechanism, the game's main method of marketing itself from the original. In Transform, the tracks are actually designed to where a character's vehicle will transform into another type of vehicle depending on the layout of the land, such as the sea or the sky. Not only does this have a great impact visually, like just look at it, it looks absolutely incredible what's happening on screen, but you also have to adapt to slightly different controls thrust upon your vehicle. It may seem like a momentum shattering idea, but it's simplistic enough that it ultimately adds more excitement and diversity into the game. Gone are the old ways of circling around the track 3 times because now the track may change due to the implementation of these transform mechanics on certain laps. Suddenly, Sonic All-Stars Racing went from being a competent kart racer that shined alongside Mario Kart to truly becoming a standout star of the genre. I love Transform more than any kart racer I had ever played up to its release. The transform mechanic, while simplistic, adds just enough variety to help it stand out in the most special of ways. What this game did is equivalent to creating a brand new genre of music, basically doing the impossible and adding something new and interesting to kart racing that works. There's not been a kart racer that's done this for a very long time up to this point. Mario Kart literally had a monopoly on the genre. Beyond the transform mechanic, the game offers a much larger variety of characters and tracks compared to the original. For example, Knights is playable. Enough said. There are slightly less tracks here, but there are also less repeated themes here as well, which ran rampant in the original. So I'd actually give Transform the edge here as well, as there simply is more diversity in its tracks despite having less. Taking a look at some of these tracks in this game, it's truly amazing just how much imagination went into them and how many references there are packed into these levels. Controls in this game feel tighter than the original as well. I feel like I have even more control in how I drift and can more effortlessly pull off combos of drifting tricks and more to maximize my speed. It definitely feels much more refined and much more solid and has everything it has going for it to be better. Yet I don't ever feel like I'm going out of control fast like it did in the original. It definitely sounds like a complete improvement over the original. But I actually like both games in terms of control for different reasons. While Transform is much more refined and thus is easier to get into for new players, I can't lie when I say that I still have a soft spot for the chaotic mechanics of the original title. I still love how the original feels in terms of how crazy it could get in terms of racing, so I guess I love both ways of playing for different reasons, which I actually really appreciate. It gives both games a space in my head, and one isn't forgotten. I really do wish Transform became a bigger title. I really think it did everything it could have to become a great game within the genre and definitely should have gotten much more recognition for it. It would have been great to see this game get ported over to modern consoles in particular so that more people could play it. I really think it could have had a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe like life to it if Sega had invested in it, but instead we went almost a whole decade without another All-Stars racing game. Transform was basically the last thing that we got from Sumo Digital in terms of kart racing for a long time. This is despite the fact that both games sold over 1 million copies within a year of their releases. So why Sega didn't continue to push these titles is something that really baffles me and something that we will unfortunately never know. But rest assured, Sumo Digital did come back to kart racing, though not in the way that we expected. Okay, so here I am finishing up my video when I realized something. That the Sonic Forces mobile game is technically a racer. Oh boy, I was not looking forward to this. Sonic Forces Speed Battle, Sonic Forces, was originally developed by Sega Europe and Sega Heartlight for mobile devices, releasing in 2017 to help promote the other Sonic Forces. Nothing against the people that work on this game, as I'm sure they put in their best efforts to give a great experience and I've heard lots of great things about them. But mobile games are just not something I enjoy regularly. I dabbled with Sonic Dash a lot while I was in college and I just couldn't stomach playing it for more than 5 minutes at a time. It just wasn't my cup of tea. Mobile gaming in general is not my cup of tea. I'm very much in support of console gaming and I guess it just doesn't appeal to me the same way that console games do. So when I saw that Speed Battle looked like it was more the same, I largely ignored it. But Speed Battle was such an interesting game to me because to this very day it continues to receive tons of support and additional content on a level that I could never dream of for a regular Sonic game. The character roster that's mounted is insane and I love all the fan service this game is determined to provide. I mean, it probably makes Sega a lot of money, so I guess it makes sense. So since the video is technically supposed to at least touch upon every racing game, I decided to sit down and play some of it, and I was pleasantly surprised. The racing angle, while seemingly insignificant, actually adds a lot of interesting aspects to the gameplay. You're not only thinking about getting to the end in one piece anymore, but you're also trying to get ahead of your opponents and slow them down in any way. It results in an experience that I can tell gets very addicting, and I can totally understand what was going on in the mind of that kid. I may just be on my way to playing this regularly, as it's also just a blast playing as so many different characters from the franchise, like the Babylon Rogues for example, which I've been feeling very nostalgic for ever since I started writing this video. So Sonic Force's Speed Battle actually seems like something that I might enjoy regularly, and I'm glad that I decided to try it out. While we're here, Sonic does have a couple more racing experiences for modern mobile devices that I guess I'll touch upon. As I mentioned before, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing has tracks nearly identical to the original, and it was a fun experience for me at the time. Not much more to say about it. Transform also had a mobile version, which I didn't know before making this video, but it was shortly taken down afterwards, sadly, due to technical issues. There is some footage of it online, so you can take a look at it and see how it is, and maybe there's a way to get it as well, but I didn't really look into that. And the final Sonic racing game we'll discuss here also has a mobile version that's exclusive to Apple Arcade, just called Sonic Racing. Sadly, I haven't owned an Apple device for almost a decade, so I'll never get to experience it, at least unless something changes, of course. But visually, it looks like a solid enough experience. I mean, it looks like it works and it looks fun. The speed of the karts actually reminds me a lot of how the original All-Stars Racing looks, so I hope I get to try it out one day. It looks kind of chaotic and I love that chaotic energy. Well, my friends, we have finally come to the final racing title in our journey, the third attempt at a kart racing extravaganza by Sumo Digital. Team Sonic Racing has a very special place in my heart just because it was basically the first game I ever covered on this channel, and it also became a game that got a lot of attention for my channel, and so it's pretty crazy to be able to look back on it now and kind of see what I think about it all this time later. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about Team Sonic Racing, as I actually made a whole video on it basically explaining my thoughts, and so I'll leave a link to that in the top right corner. But needless to say, the decision to keep the cast exclusively Sonic was a pretty puzzling one to me, as while I'm of course a huge Sonic fan, I truly loved how All-Stars Racing was a great way to shine a spotlight on so much of Sega's history. It was also a highlight in all the Riders games and being able to play as some of those icons in Sega-infused tracks. So it's a little bit disappointing that one of the only ways we got to see people like Samba de Amigo was now basically gone. But Team Sonic Racing did promise to infuse some interesting mechanics to mix things up, namely the emphasis on teamwork. The game definitely takes a few to many pages out of heroes and reworking the All-Stars Racing engine to incorporate new ideas that depend upon you working as a team. You're racing groups of 3 as you have the goal of not just getting first place, but having all 3 of your teammates place high enough that you all accumulate the most points overall. This means even if you get first place, if your teammates are dead last, you'll likely lose. This sounds like a very meh idea on paper, as no one wants to lose their race because of the others, but if you play the game the way it's encouraging you to, this almost never happens. If you do things like ride your teammates' streams, passing along items to them and more, you'll not only pass by players naturally, but you'll also fill up your team meter faster, which lets you do the equivalent to the Superstars move in the first game and blast your way to the front. Looking at this game a whole year later, I actually still have a lot of fun with it, and in fact, I think I like it more than I did before. The racing feels almost as refined as it did in Transform, albeit some more puzzling physics here and there. I don't think I like the team mechanic as much as I like Transforms, but it is still fun in its own right and causes you to switch your strategy in races, leading to a distinct title from the previous 2 racers. For instance, I'm not necessarily as focused in drifting as I am in following my teammate's path to build up our team meter. I found that as I kept using these mechanics, the game got more fun, so I would say they were successful in creating a distinct yet fun successor. You also have the option to play the classic way as well, and so it's not like you have to play through the team mechanics. The only thing I will still criticize this game for though is that that it definitely is a downgrade in content, not just because it's only Sonic characters compared to Sega characters. There's only 15 characters that are playable, which seems like such a waste given how many great Sonic characters there actually are. Also, the fact that 9 out of 21 of the tracks are reused from previous games is also not a positive at all. It definitely is downright despicable. And the story itself is probably my least favorite campaign of all these Sonic racing games, even less than Rivals. It's not that interesting and consists of a lot of padding of all the missions it tosses at you. Some of the dialogue is pretty entertaining, I must admit, but I don't know, it just doesn't have that same feel as the other games did. But despite that, Team Sonic Racing is a solid racer in and of itself, and it also has the best soundtrack of all Sonic games. Sorry, not sorry. Well, we finally did it. We talked about every single Sonic racing game. It's actually surprising to me how diverse Sonic's racing experiences are. We talk a lot about how much the mainline Sonic games have changed ever since its inception, and that's definitely true. Like, Sonic has gone through so many changes, but the racing games have gone through almost as many iterations. It's crazy how many different experiences Sonic can offer here. While some of the games I played are far from stellar, and I mean far from stellar, I can say with confidence that every title I discuss here has something going for it and a reason for any Sonic fan to give it a try. Yes, even Sonic Drift. Riders was my favorite going into this, and it's still my favorite now. There's just nothing that's ever gonna top the memories I have with the game. But if there's anything I can take from this video, it's that I desperately want to see Sega revisit the Riders franchise and give us an experience that tops or at least matches the original. I just feel like Riders did not have the opportunities to really shine the way it could have. Like, there's just so many things it could have done that could have made Riders such a big thing. But I also surprised myself with how much I really enjoyed all of Sumo Digital's additions to the catalog. I mean, I always have, but playing them all only made me realize that so much more, especially when it came to Transform. That game is just a classic. I'm not sure where Sonic is going to go for his next racing adventure, but I can tell that it'll be a treat judging from these previous games. I especially would love to see them expand upon the Rivals concept, but with a 3D game. The multiplayer of Adventure 2 could totally be made into its own game, and I would live for every single precious minute of it. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What was your favorite Sonic racing game when you were a child, or now if you're just getting to Sonic now? Let me know why or why not, and I would love to hear all your thoughts. Let me know what kind of racing game you'd love to see in the future too. I'd be curious to hear that as well. But until next time, kart racing, foot racing, and airboarding enthusiasts, this is Riders, riding out. Special shout out to The Nerd Corner, Killer Lemurs, Team Ride with Sonic Gamers, Johnny Hinton Ortiz, Jeremy Games, Amarillo66, Time Bender, Trash Q, Abraham Muter, and Mass Muter. These are my patrons / YouTube members. If you'd like to become a patron or YouTube member, get access to a whole bunch of different perks, and please check out the links in the description box below. But alright, this is Riders, riding out.